How do I fuel for my marathons, Hyroxes, half marathons is one of the most frequently asked questions I get. So I thought I would make a video going through it all in more detail. Hopefully it can be helpful. This is what works really well for me, and I have found this makes such a massive difference when you're fueling correctly to not hit the wall in the events, and it can make such a huge difference to your performance. So I think it's really important, and this is what works really well for me, so I thought I would share it. It changes slightly. I'm going to go through pre-event and during the event, and it changes slightly depending on what the event is. Before each of these, half marathon, marathon, Hyrox, I will do a carb load, but the timeline of the carb load will slightly change depending on the event. If I'm doing a full marathon where I'm going to be exercising and working out for longer, I will do a carb load kind of 48 hours before the marathon, so I'll do it 2 days before. But if I'm doing a half marathon, I'm doing a Hyrox, personally I really only do it for the day before properly. When I am trying to do a carb load, so the purpose of a carb load is to obviously take on additional carbohydrates, which are your body's main form of energy, and they're going to help really fill up your muscle glycogen stores, which means you are fueled really well. You've got those energy stores ready for the race to hopefully prevent you, as long as you're fueling during the race as well, from hitting that wall. So I do this 2 days before for a full marathon and 1 day before for a half marathon or a Hyrox. What I generally try and aim for in a carb load is 6 to 8 grams of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight. So I personally am in around 58 kilos. So on a day I'm carb loading, I will aim for around 360 to 480 grams of carbohydrates. Now, when you're trying to do a carb load, what I find sometimes is you just think, oh, I'll eat lots of food. But then, and I've done that myself, but then what happens to me, say I've done that the day before, what happens to me then on race day is I actually just feel really sluggish, a bit lethargic, stomach doesn't feel great because I've actually just ate way more than I usually would. So I find having a plan in place for a carb load actually makes such a massive difference. So what a carb load looks like for me is I will first of all ensure that I've got a main source of carbohydrates in each of my meals. So I personally will typically have a big bowl of oats for my breakfast in the morning. For my lunch, I'll have something that's got usually bread involved, like a bagel or a pita or something like that. For my dinner, I will usually have a big bowl of pasta, maybe have some garlic bread alongside it. I try to have things similar to what I have anyway. So I eat pasta loads, I have bagels, pitas loads, I eat oats almost every day. So I try to keep it similar to what I eat and I know that my body gets on well with, but I'll just maybe have slightly more of the carbohydrates. So I'll just slightly adjust the balance of the plate to ensure that there's more of those carbohydrates, but I know that my body agrees with them. But I won't make that massively bigger, so I don't feel like I'm eating loads more food than I usually would. And I'll then try and bring in additional carbohydrates through my snacks throughout the day, in snacks that are carbohydrate dense. Now, what I would say is, see, when you are doing a carb load, you will probably find that you're having more processed foods than you usually would. And that's okay, because you're doing it because they are carbohydrate dense, they are easy for your body to digest, and they are going to give you that energy. So usually for snacks in between times on the day I'm carb loading, I will have things like sweets. I will have things like dried fruits, like dried mangoes, dried bananas are really, really good for, you can have not very much of them so they don't feel overwhelming, they don't make you feel sluggish or lethargic, but they are very carbohydrate dense. So things like sweets, things like dried fruits are great. See, after my dinner in the evening, I'll typically have like a big bowl of cereal. You know yourself, like I personally can eat a bowl of cereal and still feel hungry after it. So it doesn't, again, feel too heavy on the stomach, too overwhelming. And then you can have things like maybe like a pancake and some jam as snacks in between times. Things that are carbohydrate dense, easy to digest. That's typically what my carb load will look like the day before. The morning of the race then, so if I'm doing a marathon, I will do that basically 2 days before, both of those days. If I'm doing a half marathon or Hyrox, I'll do that 1 day before. Now, the morning of the race or the event itself, again, you want to prioritize carbohydrates more so over anything else. You want to prioritize them much more than proteins or fats. So again, on the morning of a race, I am a creature of habit. So again, I will typically have always a big bowl of oats. I know they agree with my stomach. I know I don't have any issues with those. So I will have a big bowl of oats the morning of the race, and I will make sure that I have those ideally at least 90 minutes before the race, but I'll usually have it more so like 2 hours before, 2.5 hours before, so that I do still allow those time to digest, so they don't upset my stomach in the race. then 30 minutes before the race, I'll have around 30 grams of carbohydrates, but I will make sure these 30 grams of carbohydrates are quick release sugars. They are things that are very easy to digest, so again, they're not going to upset my stomach so close to the race. So usually for me, this will look like a Squares bar or a handful of sweets is typically what it will look like for me half an hour before a race, or it could be a gel for you if you like those and you know they agree with you on your stomach. So that's the eating side of things and the carb load side of things. The other side of it then is hydration. So the week leading up to the event in particular, now I will always recommend prioritizing your hydration, but particularly in the week leading up to an event, really try to put a focus on that hydration. So for the full week leading up to it, I will really try to ensure that day and daily I get in around at least 2 litres of water. Now, electrolytes. I know there is a massive hype around electrolytes at the minute, and I do think they are a really great tool, but I don't think you need to take electrolytes every single day just as a standard on standard days. Electrolytes are a really great tool to rehydrate your body if you have been excessively sweating. So if you've done a really sweaty Hyrox session or a really sweaty interval session or a really sweaty run, then yes, electrolytes are a really great tool on days to help rehydrate you quicker. And on the week leading up to an event like a Hyrox or a marathon, I will take electrolytes daily for those days leading up to it, that kind of week before, just to ensure I am really hydrated. But that is just one thing I want to touch on. I don't generally believe that you should just take electrolytes every single day of life, because generally they aren't required unless you have been heavily sweating. The week before an event, I will take them daily just to ensure I am really well hydrated ahead of that race. The morning of then, I will ensure that I have drank some water. Now I will try and get that in as soon as I wake up, in around 500 mils of water, of liquids. I will take electrolytes in the morning of it as well, but you don't want to be drinking too much. I typically won't drink. I'll take little sips within an hour of the event, because if you're anything like me, I get very nervous and I need to go to the toilet, and I just find for the likes of a half marathon, for the likes of a marathon, for the likes of a Hyrox, taking liquids too close to the event just makes me need to go to the toilet in it. So I try and take at least 500 mils of liquids, electrolytes, water in the morning I wake up, and then not too much, just little sips to keep you hydrated within the hour before the event. So hydration is key. I personally use the Hyrox, the Electro orange flavour for my protein, love them. So I think that's everything in terms of fueling pre-event. So now just to chat about during the event. This is where it is definitely slightly different depending on the event. One thing I would say across the board with every event, Hyrox, half marathon, marathon, something I have personally found is staying hydrated really makes a huge difference. It just kind of reminds, for me, I find it reminds your body that you're okay. It doesn't need to be huge amounts. If you're in a marathon, I personally try to take water at every single station available, even if it is just a little sip. For me, it makes a huge difference. Same like for a half marathon, I completely understand when you are in the pain cave or when it is feeling hard to do, and the whole awkwardness of trying to get to the water station and the awkwardness of drinking it while you're running. The whole process of that, I fully understand, feels quite difficult, but try and make it a priority, because staying hydrated throughout the race makes a massive difference. So for a half marathon and a marathon, I will always try to ensure I take water on all the stations available, even if it's just the smallest sip. I think it makes a massive difference staying hydrated throughout the race. In terms of Hyrox as well, see, because it is shorter and it feels, for me, higher, quicker paced and kind of higher intensity, I find it's even more difficult to pick those up. But again, a couple of times, even just a couple of times throughout the race, I would recommend just grabbing a wee cup on your way out of the way out in the rock zone, taking a wee quick sip, even though it's just a sip. That small sip, even 1 or 2 times throughout that race, can make a huge difference to how your body feels. Staying hydrated throughout the events, I think, makes a massive difference. The next thing I do personally to fuel during the events is use gels. Now, I know these are not for everyone, but I personally have found that these are what work best for me in the race. I personally find these are the things that are easiest to take while I'm running, while I'm doing something higher intensity. They are quick, they are easy, and I do find that they give me the energy that I need. So again, I personally use the energy gels from My Protein. These are actually a fairly new flavour. This is their blood orange flavour, and that is personally my favourite. I find them easiest to take, and I actually like the taste of them. I really do. So if it's a marathon or a half marathon, I take these every 30 to 35 minutes. These did take me a while to get used to. I would have a bit of a fragile stomach when I'm running anyway, so I definitely did need to build up to these, and I definitely did need to get my stomach used to them. So I would strongly recommend, I think most people do this anyway, but I would strongly recommend using these on your runs leading up training for the event, getting your stomach used to it. The first marathon I did, I planned to take these every half an hour, but my stomach couldn't, and I had practiced with them before. It was okay, but I couldn't take one every half an hour, so I ended up taking one every 40 to 45 minutes. In my most recent marathon, when I built my stomach up more, I was able to take these every 35 minutes, and I got a 14-minute PB, and I do think the fueling did really help. So I take them every 30 to 35 minutes. You want to take them at least every 40. You want to, something that was said to me, and I found that massively beneficial when it comes to both your hydration and your fueling in a half marathon. You don't want to wait to the point where you're feeling thirsty. You don't want to wait to the point where you feel like you need a gel, because if you wait to that point, you're probably already dehydrated. You're probably already needing the energy, and it's slightly harder to recover from, I think. So you want to take them before you even feel like you need them. It's something you actually need to remind yourself of. I actually find myself in my marathons and in my half marathons, especially when you're in the event, it's so easy to get caught up in the event and get distracted by the crowds and everything like that. So try to make sure you go in with a fueling plan and remind yourself of it, keep it in the back of your head, and make sure you're trying to take them before you feel like you need them. Fueling throughout, getting the carbohydrates in, getting the water in, honestly, I really do believe will be the difference between hitting the wall and not hitting the wall in the likes of a half marathon and a marathon. Now, in terms of fueling during a Hyrox, because for me that is a shorter period of time, so it's in around 70 minutes, I personally haven't used a gel yet. So I take water, I'll take a couple of sips, different points in the rock zone to stay hydrated, but I personally haven't tried a gel yet. I actually meant to try a gel in my last solo in Cardiff, but it dropped out after the sled push. I was gutted. I was thinking after the burpees, but it fell out. So I haven't actually tried it yet, but that is my plan for the next Hyrox that I do. I plan to take a gel after the burpees, because I have found in my half marathons and my marathons, it really does make a massive difference. So that's gonna be my plan for the next one. I really do believe that fueling during the event can make a massive difference, even when it is a shorter one like a Hyrox. So I think that's pretty much all the main points I was going to cover. If there's any other questions, let me know and I can cover them off in a different video. But the overarching thing that I would say throughout all of this is what generally works well for me. What I would say to everyone when it comes to fueling during, whether it be gels, whether it be sweets, whether it be sticks, when it comes to fueling the morning of either the Hyrox or the half marathon or the marathon, when it comes to your carb load, try it out beforehand. Try it out in training. You know, if you're doing a marathon and you have your longest run of the marathon block, which is maybe 30 to 34k, try out your carb load the day before that. Try out your morning breakfast the morning before that. If you're doing maybe a Hyrox sim, try out fueling during it. If you're doing your runs, try out your fueling during. Try out the gels, get your stomach used to it. Try not to do anything for the first time the day of the race or the day of the marathon. Try to see what works for you, because generally you want to still follow those principles in terms of around 6 to 8 grams per kilo of body weight for your carb load in terms of carbohydrates. You want to try and bring in a main source of carbohydrates into each of your meals. You want to try and focus on carbohydrate dense snacks in between times, which may mean more processed foods. The morning of, you want to prioritize carbohydrates more so than protein or fats. Yes, you still want to put those principles into place. Yes, you want to stay hydrated in the race. Yes, you want to have quick release sugars 30 minutes before. Yes, still put those principles into place, but you want to find the foods that work for you. And that's different for everyone. Morning of the race, for me, I have a big bowl of oats, but I know some people have a bagel and banana. Some people have 2 big bowls of cereal. It's different for everyone. Find what way works for you. But in general, those principles will ensure that you are really filling up those muscle glycogen stores. You are fueled for your event and you don't hit the wall. So try it out. Let me know if there's anything I've missed off. Let me know if you have any more questions, but hopefully that is helpful and that works really well for me. And I really do think that fueling can make such a massive difference to your performance. So make sure you put a bit of a priority on it and create a plan ahead of time, because that makes all the difference.